Hello, hello. Okay, so I saw this is what we're going to talk about, auditory processing disorder. All right. I like the subject. I think I like working memory better, but auditory processing is huge, and it's something that we need to talk about. And it reminded me this morning when I was watching the Today Show. I love getting up, getting my coffee, and just having quiet. I will wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to have quiet. So I was watching the Today Show, and it was all about auditory processing. And I was like, oh, that would be a huge topic to talk about on Facebook, on here on the page. And I was like, a lot of people get auditory processing mixed up with other disorders. And it would be good to kind of clear that air of how they actually do not associate with each other and they are completely different. So we're going to talk about auditory processing in just a second, okay? Hey, Erin, I got your stuff. I promise I'm going to get with you. I promise. Okay, so my name is Raven Woods. I'm the CEO and founder of Autism Mama Rocks, the IEP, and I help parents gain the knowledge and the confidence to become the CEO of their IEP meeting. So with that said, do me a favor and post a 1 below if it's your first through third time catching me live. Okay, you only have 3 shots, so you might as well go ahead and try it. So post a 1 below if it's your first or third time catching me live. And if you're interested, put in the search bar, Autism Mama Rocks IEP group, and you can join the amazing group, okay? The ladies have really kind of taken it over. I don't even really do anything anymore. I feel like it's not even my group. No, I'm kidding, but it's just amazing. I go in and answer questions here and there. But the women on there are amazing. So the group keeps itself alive because of all the amazing people on it. So feel free if you are interested. All right, so we're going to get back to auditory processing because that's what we're talking about today. Hi, Christina. How are you? How did that email go? Whatever happened with that? Hi, Tony. How are you? Hi, BB. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. Hi, Erin. Okay. And by the way, it's under the Autism Mama Rocks IEP. It's just a Gmail instead of the .com. That's all that is. Okay, so let's talk about this, okay? So I also have a evaluation in front of me that I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about so that you can kind of understand what evaluations would look like, okay? Believe it or not, evaluations for auditory processing disorder typically should not happen before the age of 7. Interesting, right? Because how many issues could we have way before 7, right? So what do we do about that? And the thing is there's not a whole lot because there's certain ways in which the test is typically done by an audiologist. The only person who can diagnose your child, okay, or should, okay, is a audiologist, okay? So it has to do, okay. So it has to do with who is the most qualified, okay? So when we're talking about auditory processing, when I'll ask the school system, okay, I want this child to have a auditory processing assessment done, okay, which I want it's actually something I ask for all children. Because even if you don't suspect it, at least let's check it off, I'm one where I want to do the whole shebang. I want to do all the assessments, all right? So you may look at it like, oh, well, I don't want my child going through all those evaluations. Well, here's the argument there, and I'm going to argue with you with this, okay? So hear me out. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm not putting my child through all those evaluations, oh my God, think about it like this. Have the school system work around your child because this is an individual education program. So what you do is, and how schools should be doing it instead of the way they are doing it, is they literally will test your child and they're tested in increments, okay? Baby steps. And instead of, bam, 2.5 hours for a psycho ed, and then the next day, 2.5 hours, or whatever it is, that's typically how things are done. Or sometimes they'll say, oh, we did it in 2.5 hours. Well, I don't want to sit for 2.5 hours. Why are you making a child with special needs sit for 2.5 hours and then think that you're going to get a really awesome assessment? Now, Do we get awesome assessments every now and then? Yeah, we really do. But if your child isn't one that can sit that long or be productive in sitting for 2.5 hours to do a psychoed, when in all honesty, a good psychologist, especially on the outside, will conduct a psychoeducational between 2 and 7 days. They don't just shove it down the child's throat and say, okay, cool, I got an assessment. Because the goal of doing the assessment is to have accurate data. And you're not going to get accurate data if you have a ticked off child, or a child that's not any longer paying attention, or a child that's having behavior issues because they no longer are interested in what you're trying to test them with. So I always talk about, we have to work with them. So we can't just, the psychologist only has a certain amount of time, so, we have to just get this done. No, if the child actually needs to be tested in 15-minute increments, do you know that's what they have to do? They do. They don't want to. They'll argue with you and say, we can't do that. But then they're not serving that child. They're not providing FAPE if that's what that child needs. All right? I'm not saying that children need 15-minute increments. I'm just saying that whatever it is, that's what they have to work with. They don't get to argue with us about it as if it's the best decision. We're not saying it's the best decision. The child is. Because I talked just earlier last week about how children in taking assessments, we as parents will get assessments back that say proceed with caution, or we'll get assessments back saying that it was not able to be done. Well, the reason it wasn't able to be done typically is because the child no longer wanted to participate. They were frustrated, they were angry, they had behavior issues, whatever the case may be. They don't want to take that assessment anymore. Now, there's some situations where the child cannot do the assessment, okay, due to being nonverbal or something like that. Well, that's not an excuse. It's not, okay, because as we talked about a couple weeks ago, and you can go check it out, about children who are nonverbal and how to assess them and the science behind it. So if you're serving that child and their individual needs, then you will serve them in the right way and give them the proper assessments that can take the place of the assessments that they're unable to get done. Okay, so make sure that your team is working around your child and your child's abilities and your child's ability to focus and stay on task. And remember that if they're unable to stay on task, they're more than likely, or you're more than likely, not going to get a really valid assessment. Okay, so watch for that wording of caution, couldn't finish the test, unsuccessful, all of those words, because you want to make sure that your child was able to finish that assessment. And that's a good question to ask too. How was Sarah when she took the WISC-5? What was her personality like at the time? What was her demeanor like? Was she happy? Was she sad? Was she frustrated? Was she angry? Was she focused? You want to know these things because, believe it or not, it's going to feed you really good information. I always say, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. Answer their question with a question. All right? So you're always asking questions because you're always wanting to gather a bunch of information, because that information is going to help you. So if you're hearing, all right, hey, Miss Smith, we just wanted to let you know after you ask, okay, we want you to know that, Sarah is really struggling with staying focused, or say that's a history of your child, and then they did the evaluation in 2.5 hours, which is not likely to be fully done. Just so you know, you can't really successfully finish some of these evaluations in that short of a time. Okay, you just can't. Now, when they say it's done in 2.5 hours, then that's when you really need to question, okay, how was your child? Were they happy? Were they sad? Were they in their seat? Were they focused? What was going on when that assessment was done? And really dig for information so that you can then make sense of maybe the assessment. Maybe there's something in the assessment that you're just like, this isn't right. This isn't what Sarah's doing. Or this isn't, really portraying my child. Or really? She did that? So when you have those things of shock, that doesn't mean they're lying or they didn't do what they're supposed to do. but it should kind of ring a bell of, okay, I need to look into this more. And it may be nothing, but we need to find out, right? Okay, so APD, okay? Auditory processing disorder, okay? It's an auditory, I have my notes in front of me, okay? It's an auditory processing disorder, all right, that is not, this is important, that is not the result of higher order, all right, more global deficits such as autism, intellectual disabilities, and other disabilities like attention deficit, hearing impairment, that sort of thing. All right, so a lot of people get things confused, and they also really associate auditory processing with speech, and they're completely opposite as well. We will get there. So not all learning, language, and communication deficits are auditory processing. And no matter how many symptoms that your child has, only careful, accurate diagnosis by an audiologist needs to happen to officially diagnose your child with auditory processing, okay? Don't let somebody just come up to you and say, she has auditory processing disorder, or he has auditory processing disorder, because it is likely to get confused with other disorders. And that's normal, you know, like children with autism or attention deficit disorder. I mean, it would be normal because you're like, hello, talk to me. Do you see me? And I know sometimes I'm looking at Sky, look at mom, look at me, you know, but that doesn't mean she's not processing what I'm telling her, all right? It's just part of autism, all right? Just like, you know, if we're talking to a child with ADHD, just because we're saying, hello, come on, Johnny, listen to me, that it just could be, they're not focused, you know? So just, you know, watch the confusion and really find out if it is the source, okay, and is the problem. All right, so it definitely takes a multidisciplinary team approach, but again, diagnosis for ADP is audiologist, okay? And treatment is individualized, okay? So it could be speech, it could be therapy, all right, other types of therapy. It could be various different computer programs, but we're going to get into this, okay? So, auditory processing disorder, I'm going to give you a little bit of history. This is the boring part, okay? So, it's how the central nervous system and it's hard to explain, refers to the central nervous system and how it uses auditory information, okay? So, one of the things the central nervous system does is it's responsible for memory, attention, and language. So it's not just responsible for the auditory processing, okay? And again, don't get it confused with other disorders, okay? So cognitive, language, etc. And, you know, autism is very much a language disorder as well, okay? So the terms language processing and auditory processing, all right, a lot of people will kind of interchange them, if you will, okay? So it's important to know that they are not the same thing, okay? They are not. Hey, Kim, how are you? All right. My meeting is Thursday. It'll probably have to be rescheduled because we keep getting hit with tons of snow. We live in rural southern Illinois. Okay. All right, all right. Okay, make sure if you're hopping on here, you post a 1 below if it's your first and third time catching me live. Post a 2 below if you're an oldie but goodie, okay? All right, we're talking about auditory processing disorder. All right, so I'll give you an example of things that children may exhibit, all right? That you would say, oh, you know, that's really familiar. Raven told me about this. All right, so you want to look for difficulty understanding speech and understanding speech in noisy environments. Okay, why is that? Because if you're processing something that's being said to you in a chaotic room, chaos, noise, craziness, are you still able to process what was being said to you? It could be as simple as, can you take out the trash, to something more technical, all right? The other thing is following directions. Again, do you see how this is really going to get disrupted? Because following directions, well, that could be autism, that could be ADHD, right? So we have to really look at this and focus on, okay, what is it I really need to look at here? What is the biggest deficit that I need to focus on? All right. So the next thing is discriminating or telling the difference between similar speech sounds. Okay. So those are like the three areas that you need to look out for. So it's noisy environments, okay, and understanding the speech that's coming into you. The next one is following directions. So that's, what's being relayed, the processing of it, and then being able to go and do it. All right. And then discriminating. So basically the difference between similar speech sounds. All right. So that's why a lot of people will say, oh, auditory processing, you need speech therapy. Sometimes. Okay. So it just depends on how the impact of disability is affecting that child, where the impact is most severely. Okay. And hitting that child. All right. So auditory processing disorders may have difficulty, and children diagnosed with it will have difficulty with spelling, reading, and understanding information presented verbally in the classroom. So impact of disability. All right. They're going to have trouble understanding what is said in the classroom. So then it's going to look like that they're not paying attention, they're not focused, they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. However, once they understand, they're able to usually independently do the work that they're supposed to be doing. All right. So you can see this big problem, but then it's easily resolved. Okay. The other thing is often their performance in class lies heavily on what they're processing. All right. So if they're able to process things in a way in which they understand, and they're able to then go do work or whatever it was that was said to them, they will typically, as I said, function appropriately, do the work that they need to be doing, and move forward. All right. The other thing I want you to know is that 7 to 8 year range. That is because typically an audiologist will perform this assessment, if you will, in a soundproof room. Okay. And a child younger than 7 is not going to be able to do that. That's why if a speech therapist says, oh, well, we will do the testing, you want to find out what type of testing that they're going to do, because to have a really good assessment by an audiologist, you want that soundproof room. All right. And it doesn't matter if your child can speak. All right. It's all about, they have actions and reactions to different sounds, So as long as they can hear, then the test can be very successful. All right. And there's different ways to accommodate a child who is nonverbal versus verbal, or a child that may be scared of the room, that kind of thing. So there's different things that can go into play that will calm your child if they have that type of anxiety, or would have anxiety being shut into a room. But typically audiologists who work with children know that they're working with children with special needs, and they have all those accommodations available and are able to then perform the evaluation. And typically they're very successful. Will you have to come back another day sometimes, to kind of familiarize your child to what would be happening? Yeah, that's definitely going to happen with some children, and that's okay. But you just want to keep going back and making sure so that you can have that appropriate assessment by the most qualified person versus someone that is really not trained in doing an official, formal auditory processing assessment. All right? So moving on. This is more like a tip of the week today, guys. So I'm going to go over this evaluation just a little bit. Not much, okay? But I just want to kind of pinpoint some things of how it was done in the educational setting. This was done by an educational audiologist. And she actually went into the classroom, which I thought was pretty cool. But it wasn't, in my opinion, fully providing what was needed for that child. She could have gone and done the room, and this physical evaluation could have also been done. All right. So she went into the room, she observed her, she was able to go through all her other evaluations and interventions and read those summaries, and that's definitely what they do. They have a parent questionnaire, they have a teacher questionnaire, really trying to find out where the deficits are with the child, and they are evaluating kind of like a BCBA would in the educational setting, go and observe and have the questionnaires for the parents and the teachers, and then allow that information to come in, and then that goes together with what they observed and the different things that they may do, like they may call out to the child while the child's learning and the teacher is teaching. There's different things that they can do to find out if the processing of the brain of what has been said is being done. All right. And they can also reference other assessments that may need to be done because they have concerns or other things that they think may be an issue or a concern, or it could just not be the auditory processing. It could be something more. All right. Which I like because audiologists are pretty thorough in that way, just like most BCBAs. So I just think that it's a really good test to have, especially if your child is having trouble with processing. I always talk about working memory, and I always talk about the fact that working memory affects what? Reading, writing, written expression, and math. And it is going to impact everything about the educational setting. Well, auditory processing can do the same. Hi, Doris. Hi, Tita. How are you? Very interested in this conversation as my child, SLP, says that my child has auditory processing. Okay. All right. So again, post a 1 below if it's your first through third time catching me live. Post a 2 below if you are an oldie but goodie. So continuing with auditory processing, and what brought this to my mind, this is not what I was going to talk about today. So I did not have, a couple days of, okay, what do I want to talk about? What do I really want to really research more and talk about with parents? I didn't have that time. That today was like on the fly. And the reason is because it was on the Today Show, and I think I took a picture and posted it. But I thought it was cool that, this is coming out more. It's, out there to where parents are knowing, oh, this could be an issue, or like Doris said, that the speech therapist has said that her child has auditory processing, which Teresa will tell you, how does she know that? If your child hasn't been assessed, I would not just take somebody's word for it. I'm not saying the speech therapist doesn't know for sure, but unless an assessment is done, a formal assessment, then I wouldn't just take their word for it. All right. So a couple of the helpers that this audiologist, I think I'll bring this up in my meeting. Okay. Consider implementation of an auditory retaining program in areas of dichotic listening and temporal pattern processing. All right, I hear about this all the time. I don't know exactly what it is. I'm not an audiologist, okay? But I do know what temporal pattern processing is, and it's really a good way to see if a child is processing, all right? So I'm gonna have to look up that dichotic part. But it's a retaining program, and I also know what a retaining program is. So it's basically working the brain of the child to get better, to perfect, if you will, their auditory processing so that it gets better, so that, there's ways in which to compensate for what is going on. And as that compensation builds, the problem doesn't just go away, but it is improved. Say what? One more time, say that. Say what? Okay. So the next thing she recommended was strategic seating close to the point of instruction and away from background noise. I don't have auditory processing. I don't know about you, but I cannot focus if there's tons of noise going on. I'm not even one that can focus like if the TV's on. If I'm going through IEPs and I'm going through, I'll have all my papers out. Yeah, I'm old school, okay? I print the stuff out. And so, hi Nilda, how are you? And so I find it interesting when I'm comparing documents and I'm like really focused and I'm trying to find, anything and everything that I can to find out what the deficits are here. I'll give you an example. I just had gotten a child's evaluations from the attorney that I'm working with for this school system because they suck their attorneys on me all the time, okay? And so I was going through all of the evaluations along with looking at the child's 2018 IEP, 2019-20 IEP, and then the current IEP that's going to be proposed. And I found that this child had regressed. And the testing, get this guys, all right, this school district, this is Oklahoma. And they actually tried to pull off with the parent to not have the child formally assessed until the child was 10. They said, oh, we don't have to do it till your child's 10. So they were just doing reads, RED, a review of existing data, and bypassing formal assessments because they could. And the parent allowed it, not realizing, hey, this doesn't make sense. What do you mean you're not going to assess my child till they're 10? So then I come into play. So now all of a sudden, the attorney is involved, and boy, did she and I go at it in the beginning, but now we're cool. And then we had a little bit of a hiccup yesterday. She didn't want to give us the evaluations. And so I said, oh, okay, that's fine. I can play that game too. And I said, so this is what we're going to do. You don't have to provide the evaluations, but we'll just continue the meeting because you're not allowing the parent to participate as an equal team member. So when you're ready to allow the parent to participate as an equal team member and provide us the documents so that we can participate. And the thing is when you participate, you, the parent, guardian, grandma, I don't care who you are, if you are in charge of that child, then you have to be able to equally participate. That means they can't say, hey, your IEP is only an hour. They can't say, okay, we did this draft and, this is what we're going to do. Here's the goals, blah, blah, blah. And then you have no say. Nope, sorry, that's not how it works. And they definitely can't put anything on you that didn't include you. And you have to know what they know. If you don't, then you're unable to participate as an equal team member. And what happens is school systems usually kind of have the upper hand, if you will, and they'll say, oh, so here's the meeting notice, here's the date, and, maybe you did go back and forth on the date, maybe you agreed with the date, but then they said they just give you the time. Do they ask you, oh, what time works for you, and then you say 9 o'clock, and then they say, okay, 9 to 10, and they put a cap on it? No. It states in IDEA that IEP lasts as long as needed, okay? They don't get to just say, oh, we're in the middle of creating an IEP, so have a nice day. It has to be a team decision to, okay, let's hold the meeting. We're going to come back another day and finish creating the IEP meeting, all right? And if they refuse to do that, then they're removing your right to participate equally. And you can then make a state complaint and have them do a ton of paperwork. Why not, right? They're not respecting you. You're not going to respect them. That's how things work. So minimizing background noise and distractions within the classroom, both learning and study periods. She suggested visual supplements to aid with auditory signal. And this can include, but not limited to, pictures, objects, and notes to help supplementary auditory information. The next thing she suggested is slow, repeat, and rephrase of pertinent information, all right? Which a lot of us need. So a lot of what goes with this disorder, many of us actually need in just everyday life. Another thing was gaining the child's attention before you speak with them, All right. So if they're in the gen ed classroom, you can't say, oh, they can't be in the gen ed classroom because we can't sit and speak with them before we speak to the other kids. So what that means is, oh, you may have to provide a para or a one-on-one for that child because you're unable to do it yourself as the teacher, which is fine. So then the child has to have a para because you're not going to take the child out of the least restrictive environment if it's not necessary, simply because they need things repeated. All right. The other thing is provide extra time to process auditory information. All right. So, and this is what this does is, have you ever heard of auditory fatigue? It's almost like when you've taken in so much information that's all it is. It's just kind of going in one ear and out the other. All right. No, they always said this is your time and date for meeting and couldn't change to a later time. Was told no, I didn't know this before, but I know. So now I know they have to and will make them change the date if I can make it. Yeah. So, in providing the extra time, all right, it allows them the time to process information and be able to act upon whatever's being told or asked of them, and not having the fatigue, which can then kind of spiral. It can have a domino effect, and it could increase anxiety. It could increase sensory issues. If the child actually has, and this is a hard one, is diagnosing auditory processing. If the child has ADHD or autism, that is hard. Okay? So you have to, if you see other issues, you have to just keep pushing to get your child, diagnosed, not in school, but outside of school. So that, you can really get them the help they need in school, because it has to be different. All right. So it can't be on your IEP just saying autism if your child has autism and auditory processing disorder. It needs to say autism and auditory processing disorder. Okay. And never let the school tell you that, oh, we can't put that into the IEP. The hell they can't. All right. So this is what you got to do. Is you can say to them, you know what? My child was diagnosed with this. I'm giving you this information. I'm an equal member of this team, and I am asking you to put this into the IEP. And I don't care if you put it in as child was medically diagnosed with autism or auditory processing on such and such date by such and such doctor. Fine. And then we'll fight it out later. Whatever. Just get it in the IEP. But for them to argue with you about that, they can't really do that, all right? Now, do they have to put it under impact of disability immediately? Is that worth an argument? No. What is worth the argument is getting it into the IEP. Like I said, I don't care if they want to write. That's what they did with my daughter in the beginning. In preschool, it's always developmental delay, right? And then they go to, what age do you think a child can get diagnosed with? It's usually 7 to 8. But I'm not an audiologist, so I'm not saying it can't be done earlier, but usually it's between 7 and 8 if there's issues that are caught. So I want you to think about that. Another thing she suggests, and I'm telling you this is an assessment of a child who had an auditory processing assessment that I had requested. And I really liked the suggestions that the audiologist had. And take note of them, because they're suggestions that you can use for other things. So I'm going to go through them one more time. All right. The first one, this is for auditory processing disorder, but do you know any accommodation and things that help children, help all children, not just children with special needs? Do you know when accommodations are put in place in a classroom for a child with special needs, but it affects all children, it helps them too. So that's a good thing. So consider implementation of an auditory retraining program. Retraining. Okay, I said that right. Retraining program. So they're retraining their auditory processing. All right. And in the areas of dichotic, if that was the word you guys were asking about, that's DICHOTIC. So dichotic listening and temporal pattern processing. All right. The next one is signal to improved the signal to noise ratio with assistive technology following evaluation to determine functional benefits in the classroom. Hi Inez, how are you? The third one is strategic seating close to the point of instruction away from background noise. Okay. So basically, all right, in a non-traditional classroom, there's noise. All right, kids make noise as much as it makes me crazy. I hated buying toys, guys, for my kids, which I did. I bought the stupid toys, but the toys that need batteries, and then you're like, okay, by the time your child's like 1, you like take the batteries out and tell the child there's no batteries, I cannot buy them, I cannot find them anywhere at the store. Just kidding. My kids had all those toys, so I was always batshit crazy. So the next thing is strategic seating, which I was talking about, making sure that your child has some peace and quiet to be able to learn. So how does that work in the classroom? You have kids make noise. I mean, sometimes the teenagers, guys, in high school make more noise than the little ones, So it's like you never can have a classroom or expect to have a classroom that is completely silent. So what do you do in order to meet that child's needs? So you don't want to remove, if a child is able to be in the gen ed classroom, never remove them from the gen ed classroom. Now, reasons I like to remove kids from the gen ed classroom, okay, as an educator, okay, is if the children are learning algebra, multiplication, whatever, okay, and your child is only doing single-digit addition and subtraction, no clue how to do multiplication or division or algebra, okay, which, believe it or not, kids start in like 3rd grade, so they didn't do that when I grew up, but they are now. So I've struggled with this one, to be quite honest. I've said this to you guys before, because school districts these days believe, and I don't know if it's so much the teachers, because I've yet to hear a teacher say, no, we don't do that, Have I heard specialists? Yeah, because they're, few and far between. Is that how you say it? Few and far between? Yeah. But the thing is like, I feel, okay, this is my personal thought, is why, it's the same thing with assessments, like the state assessments. Why make a child do something like a state assessment, all right, if they're totally unable to do that? If they're taking an 8th grade, usually like state assessments are what? 3rd grade, possibly 5th grade, 8th grade, and in high school, right? So, and it tweaks a little bit per state. But the thing is if your child has no idea what they're doing, and no way, shape, or form are they on grade level, tell me and help me understand why you would want them to take that test. Just because you want them on the graduation track. Are you falsely hoping at that moment for something different? Are you not facing the fact, and I'm not being offensive, I'm just being real, are you not facing the fact that there's a deficit there, and you need to focus on the deficit and focus on progress, and then guess what? Then you can change that track. You know what I mean? But you can't have a child take an assessment that they're completely not able to do. Or, as I was saying, be in a classroom, a gen ed classroom, doing algebra, double-digit multiplication, whatever, and the child's only doing single-digit addition and subtraction. That's not fair. I look at it like, how would I feel because it's not just about the disability, you have to think that these kids have emotions as well. And that can't be overlooked because we're so focused on academic. So you got to think about, put yourself in their shoes, not knowing everything that they may be processing. And then being in a classroom that is teaching something that is way over your head. How would you feel? And so that's what makes my decision. We all make our own decisions. You're the parent. But for me, I would then say, okay, I want my Skylar in the gen ed setting for this, and this, but for, say, math and reading, I'm going to have her have direct instruction because she would learn better that way. That's how she learns, is the direct instruction, the one-on-one, versus in a gen ed setting, not processing it being completely over her head, and there's no learning happening at all. All right? So gen ed setting or learning. You got to make some choices and then run with it. You can't, oh, I want my child on the graduation track because that's what I've always wanted, because, you know, life is just, that's just how life is, you know, because we were brought up, or most of us were, oh, you go to school and then you go to college and then you get married and then you have kids. Well, I screwed that whole system up. So, you know, things don't work like that. There's no bam, 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 bam. Or at least my life wasn't, you know. I had my oldest, who's 25, at 19. Did I plan that? Nope. But guess what? Things are going to change, all right? So if you have your child on the graduation track and they're not there, please take them off. And don't think for 1 second that they're never going to get back on it. Believe that if you stop focusing on that where they aren't and focus where they are and them making progress, then guess what? They can get back to that graduation track, but at least meet them where they are at the moment, you know? So I don't try to get hard on parents, but I do want you to think about things. So I'm going to put it in your face, and then you take it as you will, how you want to take it, and then think about it, okay? Because I don't want to see, and this will mess up your IEPs, all right? If you're one of those parents, which I was when my daughter was younger, I don't want to face anything. So she's fine, she'll grow out of it, you know? And that didn't happen. She didn't grow out of autism, you know, but that's what I thought in the beginning, you know, because it was my child, and my child was not going to have autism. And I had to get over myself. And this is a child that has completely changed my life for the better and, you know, taught me more than probably anyone ever has. So you have to accept them for who they are. And guess what? Let me tell you something. If we can get our kids, as slow as it may be, I don't care how slow it is, but if we can get them to a 9th grade level, reading, writing, math, etc., I don't care, guys, if they're on a 3rd grade level. Who cares? Just keep it moving, all right? And do what you have to do so that they don't regress and it does keep moving, even if at a slow pace, which means if you have to be Mama Bear, and you know what I'm saying, then that's what you have to be every single year. And don't let time pass to where you're like I was, oh my God, why did I not stay on top of this? Life got busy, I was working, you know, it got past me and I didn't follow up. I didn't realize I had to babysit the school system, and that's what I call it. I had to babysit them, still do. And that sucks, you know? I don't want to babysit adults, but you have to, you know? I mean, if you think that they're just going to do everything that's best for your child, well, tell me what school district you're in. I want to come there because it's not happening. So if you want it to happen, you have to get into the game and you have to make sure that you do it right. And you have to have a lot of tenacity. You have to have a lot of, you have to not be afraid to argue, all right? And I know there's so many moms I work with that is not their thing. That's why they came to me, because they do not like to argue. And in my mind, I'm like, damn, what do you think about me? Because I'll argue. I don't like to argue, but I'll argue any day of the week if I have to. So it's not about liking it. It's about I do what I have to do because we have to do what we have to do for our kids. All right? So moving forward, minimize background noise distractions within the classroom, both learning and study. Visual supplements to aid auditory signal. So I love this one because I'm a visual person. All right. So someone could tell me something. All right. On the phone. All right. And if my parents are on here, they know this is true. Okay. So they could tell me a whole story for 2 hours. All right. And I'll remember most of it. And a lot of times I'll take notes. But if it's just me hearing it and I'm not taking notes, or I didn't see it in documentation, as in proof that it happened, I'll take it or leave it. Because I'll remember stories, but I won't remember things that just happened and there's nothing to back it up. It's always about backing it up. I want to see the paperwork. Once I see it and hold it and look at it, then I'm able to process what's going on. That's why when I look at different documents, I'm able to say, oh, look at this. They said in 2019, XYZ, but then in 2020, it's the complete opposite, but that doesn't make sense, So I actually really like doing that because you find out so much when you compare documents. So visual aids are wonderful always in all areas, okay? The next thing is slowly repeat and rephrase. This is for a lot of people. So maybe getting into the habit with, explaining to teachers, say things slowly. When you're talking to Benjamin, I need you to, maybe get down to his level. Maybe things need to come out a little bit differently, and that's okay. But here's the thing, is it is not, all right? There's like this misconception with this. It's not the gen ed teacher's job to be the one-on-one. All right. I know many of us have this expectation that the teacher, they better do what they need to do for my child. But a gen ed teacher who has 30 other children cannot be one-on-one with your child or my child. Okay. So there has to be that, shoot, it just left me, accommodation put in place. All right. The one-on-one para, same thing, guys, by the way. That needs to be put in place, all right? Because stop having the expectation that the gen ed teacher is to be your child's one-on-one. They are not. They are not special education teachers. Do they have special education children and children with disabilities in their classroom? Of course. But do they have specialized training? Many of them, no. And is it their job to solely focus on our children? No. Their job is to teach all the children within the classroom, and nobody gets specialized attention or one-on-one. All right? So knowing that, now look at what does your child need? What does your child need to be able to be in that setting, but then still be part of and get what they need with, do they need accommodations? Do they need modifications? I talk about this a lot in my services accommodations and modifications course. You can make sure you grab that. I got to get that to you, Erin. And make sure that you really focus on understanding that so that your focus isn't being frustrated at the teacher, that it can be frustrated at the special education teacher and frustrated at the district admin level. All right? Because that's where the modifications and accommodations come from in regards to helping your child, whether that be a one-on-one or anything else for that matter. Okay? So make sure that your focus of frustration is on the right person. All right? Because typically it is not the gen ed teacher. Now, do you like or dislike the gen ed teacher? Sure, that's a personality thing or whatever. Is there good and bad ones? Of course. But is it their job in regards to special ed? It's not. And let me tell you another thing. The whole, I've said this before, but it's just a pet peeve. Never allow consultation. I'm telling you right now, that does not happen. They do not go into the classroom and teach the teacher speech or teach the teacher OT. They don't do that. I'm telling you right now, they don't. They write something up on a piece of paper and hand it over to the teacher. That's what they do. All right? They do not go in and, tell the teacher what to do. It doesn't happen. They write it up and give it to the teacher. So if you ever ask, oh, here you go, look, she went over this, and this with me. How are you going to prove otherwise? Another thing is sometimes the OT or speech will go in the room and like walk around for like 5 minutes and then leave. And that's their consult. That's what happens. Okay? So provide extra time to process auditory information to prevent auditory fatigue. All right? Another thing is listening breaks throughout the day. All right? So this is good stuff, guys. Make sure that look it up. Look up auditory processing. Look up, the things that you can do, like I was just explaining, to help in supporting the student. If you are fearful or worry or think that, oh, my child may have this, then go get them diagnosed and really find out if it is truly something that they have, because if they do, that could be impacting them in a gen ed setting. And you don't want that, especially if there's not a ton of other problems. This is one that can easily be handled with the right accommodations. So I hate for children to be on this downward spiral, all because of not having their needs met in a way that is so small, but it's ignored and goes ignored. They're kind of thrown under the table, under the bus, whatever. And then what happens when something starts out so small? It continues to grow, and that gap continues to grow, and that child's needs continue to grow because they continue to move with each grade. They keep being pushed to each grade at times, and then nothing's ever addressed because that's what they want to do. They just want to keep on pushing. Another child, we don't have to deal with that here. So you have got to take a step forward in making sure that you are on this. That's why your IEPs are so important. That's why your present levels are so important. That's why your present levels being as 250% awesome is so important, so that your goals, accommodations, modifications, and services come from your present levels and that they're written appropriately and adequately. School systems are not doing that. They're just not. The goals are horrific. They're all over the place. They're not in sync and flow. I even had a judge in California when we were agreeing in mediation, he told the school system, that's not how you write goals. They need to flow. Because I sent the goals back and said, no, that's not how you write goals. This is how you need to write them. Do you want me to write them for you? And so the judge said, what do you mean? And so I explained it to him, and he said, oh yeah, that's not how you write goals. They do need to flow. So then he talked to the school system and told the school system how they were writing goals was wrong. So then the director of special education asked me, well, how do you want them to be written? So literally, I wrote the goals for the school system in California in mediation because the judge corrected them because they didn't know how to write goals. And this was the director and assistant director of special education that was there in mediation with me and the parent. And they had no idea how to write goals. I'm glad they were corrected by the judge. I mean, I had already told them. That's why we went to mediation, because they were just dummies and they weren't giving in. And so we went to mediation, and we actually agreed pretty quickly, believe it or not. But they needed to get with the show. I mean, the child did get private school, and the private school actually offered all the things that she needed, so we didn't have to add a whole bunch of things. They have a BCBA on staff. They have, because there was a big deficit here, and so it was pretty awesome. How easy that mediation was. They are not all easy. I always tell parents, okay, in mediation, this is the deal, okay? You never give in, okay? You never give in, because all mediation is a fight of how do you say it? It's a fight of wills. Like, who's gonna last the longest? You know, it's like getting into a ring and figuring out who's gonna be the last one standing up. That's truth. Dead end truth. Okay? Yeah, you go back and forth on what you want. They know what you want in advance, you know, or at least I always like to give them what they want in advance, you know, what we want. And so they already 80% of the time know what they're going to come to the table with, even though it's BS the first several times, because they just want to see where they can go with you. So know that about mediation is they're going to play you until you break, or they play you until they realize you're not going to break. Okay? So then you're gonna find out if they're gonna want to go to due process, or they're gonna find out that, oh, she ain't budging, you know. So, but that's how you gotta go into mediation. Never request mediation if you're not willing to move forward if it doesn't work, you know, and pursue what is needed for your child. That's what I always say. You know, why go to mediation to show face and then accept what you don't really agree with anyway? That's not how you want to be portrayed by the school system, because they will use and abuse that and run with that. So if you're going to do something and you say you're going to do something, for example, hey, I'm giving you a chance. If not, I'm going to make a bunch of state complaints. And I don't care if the state, this is what I said, I don't care if the state complaints come back founded. All I care about is the fact if I make 20 state complaints, you have to do a crap ton of paperwork. And I'll keep you doing paperwork for the rest of my life if I have to, because I'm done. And guess what? They have to do it. So you file a state complaint, and guess what they have to do? Paperwork. A lot of it. So whether you win or not, who cares? I mean, obviously you want it to be a valid complaint. But shoot, have them do the paperwork. They don't like it. They don't want to do the paperwork. And I have some tips and tricks about state complaints. If you guys are interested, I'll do a live on that. Maybe I'll do that on my group. But I have some really good tips and tricks when it comes to state complaints. So if you're interested in that, post that below, and I will definitely kind of get things together to have a live on how to make state complaints and how to then wait for the school's response to do other things to your advantage. Okay? So here we go. Here's the thing. I am going to go live tomorrow and the rest of the week, every day. Okay? And Saturday and Sunday every day, because guess what? On Tuesday, I unfortunately have to have another surgery. It's the last one. It's the last one. Okay? So I'm going to be out for like 3 weeks. So, and then I have to deal with my clients because they have to come first. And then I have all these IEPs that I'm going to have, kind of like what happened in October, which was crazy, but it's okay. I got it. But I'm going to be setting up posts for you of tips and IEP tips and all that kind of stuff. All right, in advance for you. So you'll have your IEP tips, you'll have your things that are put out there for you. My friend Erin is going to be my support system. And so we're going to really get things together for you so that you can have your tips, you can have your stuff, and you know, you can always WhatsApp me or message me if you want to. And I'll be back on as soon as I possibly can. Okay? So I'll be live every day this week and Monday. And then Tuesday I go in. So yeah. All right, guys. And she posted the WhatsApp for you. So if you are interested in messaging me for a 15 to 20 minute discovery call, just to say, hey, this is what's going on in my life. This is what's going on with my child's IEP. And basically throw up on me and we see what it is that really needs to be your focus, then please do. I would love to speak with you. All right. And I am taking clients, but it won't be until the end of March. Okay. So I can get you on the books, but it's for the end of March, just so you know in advance. because I have a whole ton of clients that I have to get through IEPs and evaluations and that sort of thing. I have a couple mediations coming up. And so I am taking 3 to 4 clients the end of March, but you want to get on the books now, if that makes sense. Okay? So you can WhatsApp me, you can PM me. I like WhatsApp better. I check it all the time. It's awesome. And Erin posted what you need to do to be able to reach me there. Okay? All right, guys. So I will talk to you soon. Check out auditory processing. If it's something that you're wondering if that's something that your child has, it's definitely something to look into because it will affect your child in the gen ed setting. It will affect them in the school setting. And it's something that can be really frustrating to them. It's not something that is not frustrating. It's frustrating. And, you know, because they want to learn, they want to do their work, and typically they can do their work once they understand. So definitely, you know, check it out. And you can even go to the Today Show because that's what they talked about today. They had a big thing on it. So if you go, what is it? NBC4 Today Show. I posted a picture this morning on it. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to talk about this today. All right. So I will talk to you again soon. I'll see you tomorrow and have a wonderful evening. Bye.